Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight, Bahamian basketball player Buddy Hield joins the NBA.
Freeport is continuing to demonstrate that they can produce world-class athletes.
A laundromat robbery ends with the alleged culprit shot by police. That story straight ahead.
The National Security Minister weighs in on the issue of drug trafficking and abuse in the country. Details straight ahead.
Welcome to our news. I'm Christina McNeil. Thanks for joining us. Topping news tonight, Democratic National Alliance leader Branville McCartney and Free National Movement leader Dr. Hubert Minnis are calling for Prime Minister Perry Christie to resign from office. This following British Prime Minister David Cameron's announcement that he's resigning from office in the wake of a British referendum where citizens voted against Cameron's agenda. Dana Smith reports.
By way of a referendum, the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union. British Prime Minister David Cameron was in favor of staying with the EU, but because of the conventions of the Westminster system, he announced he would step down. McCartney and Minnis said Christie needs to follow suit. Both men pointed to the results of the 2012 gambling referendum and this month's constitutional referendum. In the first one, voters said no to the regulation of the web shop industry, but government wound up drafting legislation to regulate the industry anyway. In the second, Christie and the rest of government called for voters to say yes, but voters said no.
He knows what he ought to do. He knows what honorable men ought to do. In those circumstances, he ought to resign. We have said this from the first referendum, and we have said it just recently after the resounding defeat of the referendum held on the 7th of June 2016.
McCartney said under the Westminster system, if a government brings a referendum to the people which is not successful and does not favor the government's position, the Prime Minister should do the honorable thing and step down.
The conventions of the Westminster system, as I've said before, from the first referendum opinion poll, dictate that the Prime Minister ought to resign. That is what Prime Minister David Cameron did.
Minnis agrees.
Cameron has demonstrated political maturity and leadership, which we would have hoped to see in our Prime Minister, and Cameron has resigned.
Taking note of the two failed referenda held under this Christie administration, Minnis said the people have spoken.
The Bahamian people, on two separate occasions, has rebuked our Prime Minister, rebuked his leadership, and rebuked his vision. On two occasions, the Prime Minister has done nothing.
In the wake of the failed 2002 referendum, Fred Mitchell, who was a PLP senator at the time, called for Prime Minister Ingram to resign. Reporting for Our News, I'm Dana Smith.
Thanks, Dana. Well, opposition leader Dr. Hubert Minnis once again coming under internal criticism, this time concerning his performance during the budget debate. The Tribune newspaper reporting today, quoting an email sent to Minnis and other members of the F&M by Central Grand Bahama MP Nico Grant, who reportedly said Minnis seemed unprepared. Grant claimed Minnis left the House of Assembly before the budget was passed, citing illness, and labeled his behavior disturbing and disrespectful. Grant said he's convinced Minnis did not study the budget, evident by his limited participation. He said Minnis was absent from the floor of the House during much of the session, despite his presence in the Parliament building. Asked about it today, Minnis declined to comment on the specifics of that letter, explaining voters are far more concerned about real issues affecting the nation.
You think the people are concerned about this one or the next when they cannot pay or buy food for themselves and their kids? That's what affects them. That's what bothers them. They're not concerned about what this one say or the next. They're concerned about saving their homes. They're concerned about their lives. They're concerned about not being able to go out or drive this place or the next in a safe environment. They're concerned about their safety.
Despite any internal issues in the F&M, Minnis says Bahamians continue to suffer from poverty, unemployment, and crime. He says the quality of life continues to deteriorate under this Christie administration, and that's what voters care about.
They're concerned about the quality of life. They're concerned about not having water or light in their homes. That affects them. That affects them directly. And that is what we should be concerned about, not about any political rhetoric. But let's look at improving the quality of life of our people.
In other news, Robinson and Marathon roads were on lockdown last evening after police caught 4 men who allegedly robbed a laundromat and fled with bags of cash. Kyle Joaquin tells us more.
Well, Christina, we're told it all started at a laundromat, but by the time the culprits made it to this light just behind me, they found themselves in a standoff with police. Fleeing in a rental car and armed with a handgun and ammunition, the 4 men reportedly sped along Prince Charles Drive, attempting to make good their escape after holding up a superwash.
Police sent out an all-points bulletin for all their vehicles. As a result of the police visibility on the road and the cars that are out there, we were able to track this vehicle that lead to a chase through several areas of western New Providence. That
chase ended when the alleged robbers got stuck at a traffic light on Marathon and Robinson roads. But as for what happened next,
the suspects emerged from the vehicle, brandishing handguns, and during an exchange of gunfire, 2 of them were shot, and they were taken to the hospital. Police recovered a firearm, a handgun on the scene. Police also recovered the stolen property, the cash, the handbag that were taken during the armed robbery. And we can tell you that these persons will be assisting us with questioning for a number of armed robberies.
One of the men, according to Dean, was on bail for armed robbery. On the scene, curious onlookers with cell phones watched as the men were forced onto the ground and handcuffed. Police say a woman's car was hit by the culprits as they came to a stop. Dean wouldn't say much about the extent of the injuries of the 2 men shot or whether superwash customers were held up during the robbery. However, he did send out this warning to criminals with similar acts in mind.
This is what the results that we are getting. We continue to put the word out there to criminals. The police force is well trained. If you commit crime in this country, we will find you. We will continue to seek you out, and we have officers. We will not stop here.
For our news, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Thanks, Kyle. Meanwhile, police on Grand Bahama are investigating the shooting death of a man at Pioneers Loop last night. Police say they were called to a home in the Pioneers Loop area around 6:30 yesterday, where they discovered the body of a man with multiple gunshot wounds. The victim's identity has not yet been released. However, our news understands that he is in his 40s. This is the 10th murder on Grand Bahama for the year. Now, police are asking anyone with information related to this shooting to contact them at 911-919 or Crime Stoppers at 328-TIPS. And despite the National Security Minister's recent revelation that crime is down 29% and murders are down 22%, F&M Senator Dr. Dwayne Sands insisted that were it not for committed healthcare professionals who spend hours elbow deep in the chest of victims of violent crime, the murder count would be higher and anguish of families would be magnified.
We have a murder and mayhem rate that defines us as one of the 20 most violent countries in the world. Now that's reality. That is my day-to-day reality. And it is not changed by the excuse of any minister, any commissioner, the prime minister, or any other politician. At 3 o'clock in the morning, when you are elbow deep in a teenager's chest, sewing up a hole that's been created by a copper-clad bullet, fired deliberately into that little boy's chest.
In those crucial moments, Sands says doctors and their teams can't afford to be distracted by political posturing.
You just shut up and get it done. Because if you fail, the murder count climbs and another family is left to grieve. Very few people have any idea what it's like to walk into a waiting room to confront an anxious family, hopefully to give them news that all will be well.
After delivering news, both bad and good, to hundreds of anxious families, Sands says he has no time for excuses.
If it were not for committed, dedicated doctors, nurses, EMTs, and other professionals who toil every day in this vineyard, who render a service for which they can never be repaid and for which many are not grateful. The anguish, the pain, and the suffering of our people would be magnified tenfold, and our murder count would be much, much higher.
In other news, after much anticipation and speculation in the run-up to the NBA draft, Grand Bahama native Buddy Hield has been drafted to the New Orleans Pelicans. Keisha Edgecombe has reaction from Hield's hometown in the wake of the exciting news.
We visited Pinedale 8 Mile Rock the day after one of its sons was drafted to the NBA, and that big announcement brought excitement to this community. Buddy Hield is now a member of the New Orleans Pelicans, and his former coaches, Moon McPhee and Ivan Butler, believe it is a great start to what will be a fruitful career.
He grew up in our camp, Hoyts, having our youth education sports, and I knew from that time, because of his work ethics, Buddy was going to be in the NBA. I know John Quill was going to be in the WNBA because of their work ethics.
Buddy did the right thing in staying in school and developing his game. And like some rookies that they project will play in another 3 or 4 years, Buddy is ready to play now.
Hield's path to the NBA was not an easy one, but it's an inspiring story for his entire community. Those dreaming to reach the NBA and others proud to know him.
I think I can make it there. Because I practice a lot, as you can see, right in our school gym.
He inspired me a lot to make it to the NBA. Face my destiny.
Words cannot describe how we feel. Just excited and happy for him is an amazing feeling.
The reason why I'm so happy and glad because he is a Bahamian and he made us proud, and he is one of the local boys from 8 Mile Rock.
The achievement of Buddy Hield, according to Prime Minister Perry Christie, is to be commended.
Well, you know what's going to happen? Freeport is continuing to demonstrate that they can produce world-class athletes. And that is going to serve to act as a further incentive to the young ones walking around here.
Now, while being drafted to the NBA is an amazing feat for this well-loved hometown boy, Buddy Hield's new team, the New Orleans Pelicans, isn't what some had hoped for.
I feel good about it. I just think he should have gone to LA Lakers.
Now that Buddy Hield has been drafted into the NBA, the entire Bahamas will be watching for his very first game, at which time Buddy Fresh, the name he has given himself, will debut. Reporting from Grand Bahama for our news, I'm Keisha Edgecombe.